Hello everyone, happy Friday. Thank you for joining me here on another episode of BrainScratch. I'm your host, John Lorden. Today we're going to do an update on a video that I have done before about the Claremont murders, also known as the Claremont serial killer. This is a story that is out of West Australia, or I don't know if it's referred to as Western Australia. Sorry if I got that wrong. And by the way, on the previous video, I got knocked around pretty good for my mispronunciation of names. Although I did look into it, it does seem to be Kiara. It's not Ciara. But outside of that, let me just apologize in advance if I get any town or street names incorrect. Quite honestly, you guys have some really cool names out there, and they're a lot more interesting than most of the names that I see around here in the US. But the case has taken some very big turns, and as a matter of fact, I was almost considering doing this as a case cracked, except it's still in process. There's the whole judicial process to go through yet, and we kind of don't know one big mystery piece, and we'll get to that as we review the new information. But over the past few weeks, there have been some major developments in this case that is now over 20 years old. Just to give you a brief recap, this is the case of these three ladies who unfortunately went missing. They were hanging out around the same part of town, and this is all at separate times in 1997, 1998, somewhere around there if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while since I've reviewed that information for that video. But two of them were found. One of them was found about a month later. Her body was found at least. And another one was found, I think, 2 months after she had disappeared. The third one has not been found yet, so there is still a missing body, and perhaps these new developments may help uncover that mystery as well. So let's jump into the new details about the Claremont murders, or the Claremont serial killer. And I just wanted to give a shout out to perthnow.com.au. They have been doing some very good coverage on this case. Several of the articles we're going to look at are from them. They're just really digging into it, and they're doing a very good job. So I just wanted to call that out. The first article we're looking at is from December 22nd, 2016. It's titled, "Man Questioned by Cold Case Detectives Over Claremont Serial Killings." However, when we get into the body of the article, it looks like he's been more than questioned. A man accused of being the Claremont serial killer has appeared in court, charged with the murders of Kiara Glennon and Jane Rimmer. Bradley Robert Edwards, 48, spoke only to confirm his name and that he understood the charges, which were laid last night after one of the most intensive manhunts in Australian history. And as I had mentioned before, both Kiara and Jane, those are the two where the bodies have been recovered. I believe that the third one that has gone missing, as we can see in the picture here, her name is Sarah Spiers. I believe that they have not filed charges there yet because there is some question as to her status. Continuing in this article down below a little bit, Police Commissioner Carl O'Callaghan announced the major breakthrough in the 20-year-old cold case this morning, saying the investigation, codenamed Macro, had also been expanded into other serious crimes. He said detectives from the Special Crimes Squad had charged a 48-year-old Kewdale man with the murders of Jane Rimmer and Kiara Glennon, as well as attacks on two other women, a 17-year-old in Claremont in 1995 and an 18-year-old in Huntingdale in 1988. Now, the 17-year-old from 1995, we actually covered that on the first video, and I will have a link to it down below if you're not familiar with this case. I really recommend that you check it out. And there are some interesting things about that story. She at least noted some details of the abduction and then lived to tell about them. So a few things that she noted is that she was tied up with what she believed to be phone wire, and she was put into some type of commercial vehicle, but she did have something over her head, so she couldn't catch much more detail than that. Continuing down below a little further, Mr. O'Callaghan also said the investigation into the disappearance and suspected murder of Sarah Spiers on January 27th, 1996 was ongoing, as was the inquiries into other matters. From this article, they're pretty clear that they're still looking for help with that. So I'm going to include any contact information I can find in the description box below. Someone out there still might have information that could help them solidify this case even more. So how did they track this man down? Let's jump to another article at perthnow.com.au. Claremont serial killings, silk kimono believed to be vital clue. And this is as of December 24th, 2016. A woman's silk dressing gown stolen off a washing line 28 years ago is believed to have been the vital clue that helped lead police to finally make an arrest in the Claremont serial killer case. It can be revealed that in 1988, 8 years before Sarah Spiers was abducted off of Claremont Street, the white kimono was dropped by an intruder who broke into the home of an 18-year-old Huntington-Dale woman and tried to rape her. Her screams caused him to flee, and police believe the stolen kimono was accidentally dropped by the man as he ran out of the home. Now, prior to this article, I was not aware of this other charge, of this other case that might be related to this. If you do look at the Claremont serial killer entry on Wikipedia, you'll see that there is mention of another person that could be potentially attached to this case, and that is just being done by a reporter. I don't know if that information is very strong, but this is the first sign that we get of there being essentially a fifth victim that, at least looking into this case before, I had never bumped into. As part of a continuing operation to retest old evidence with new technology, officers from the State Crime Operations Team did DNA tests on the kimono. It is understood the DNA samples came back as a match to samples already on the police database. Samples that had been recovered from the body of the third Claremont victim, Kiara Glennon, and from a 17-year-old woman who was grabbed in a Claremont street in 1995 and then assaulted. So that, at least, we know that there's a DNA profile. I talked about this in the previous episode. We know that they had a match between Kiara and the young girl that had been assaulted. But now we have a third match in that this kimono that apparently was taken on this trip this guy was on, breaking into someone's house, and then he dropped it on his way out. They found DNA on that also matches those other two. So now we have a very strong profile of at least 3 crimes committed, and all of them are connected by a person. And here is a picture of Bradley Robert Edwards. I've got some better ones that I will show you in a few moments. It is understood a DNA sample was taken from him immediately after his arrest, and the positive results came back about 12 hours later, leading to him being formally charged. Now, where we're not sure, and why I couldn't quite do this as a case cracked, is, okay, we know that we had DNA of this guy from those 2 other cases. We now know there's this third case, and the kimono has matching DNA, but I don't know how they triangulated on this guy. I don't know why all of a sudden he came into the crosshairs. From what I've seen, he's not someone that was considered previously. It's not like they had interviewed him in the past and they wanted to, recheck him when this new information came out. So there's a big missing piece to this story in that, how did police identify him to arrest him, to then test his DNA and then make the confirmation? And that piece is still unknown. I am fairly confident when the trial actually starts, when he starts facing these charges, that information is going to come out. But as of right now, it's kind of a big mystery. I really don't know how the task force was able to zero in on this particular guy. My gut feeling is that we're going to find out that there was a tip-off of some kind. Maybe someone kicked in some information saying, hey, you should look at this person. Because I don't know how else they would have picked him out of everyone that lives there. So who is this guy? Once again, perthnow.com.au is doing a bang-up job on this case, trying to answer the questions basically as fast as we can ask them. Bradley Robert Edwards was married during the period he's accused of perpetrating the Claremont killings. Not only was he married at that time, that marriage seemed to fall apart. And if you look at the timing of when that marriage fell apart, it looks like he started the Claremont killings specifically right around the time that his marriage was really hitting the rocks, because kind of in the middle of that time frame, he formalizes his separation from that wife. Now, he does eventually get remarried to someone else, so and that, I believe, has also ended at this point. So through 2 marriages, both of them have failed, but he was indeed with his first wife when at least some of these killings occurred. This article also says that he was a Telstra technician, and of course I'm not familiar with what Telstra is. Quick search on Wikipedia here. Telstra Corporation Limited, known as Telstra, is Australia's largest telecommunications and media company, which builds and operates telecommunications networks and markets voice, mobile, internet access, pay television, and other entertainment products and services. So he is a technician for the telecommunications industry. Remember what I said about that 17-year-old? She thought she was tied up with phone cable. Potentially it could have been network line as well. I'm not sure what his expertise is, but in either case, Telstra would definitely have technicians that have that type of equipment, especially if they're technicians to go on site and do repairs. I'm fairly confident that they would have either network cabling or telephone cord in their vehicle. This is a picture of the home in Huntingdondale where Bradley Edwards lived at the time of the killings. From what I understand, police have now searched 2 residences of his, or prior residences of his, I should say. Mr. Edwards has been described as quiet, friendly, private, and sometimes aloof by acquaintances. A keen computer gamer, he possessed a powerful gaming rig to play popular games like Battlefield. He used the profile name Bravencat on various gaming and computer forums. Despite his technical skills and interest in computers, Mr. Edwards was an infrequent poster on social media and maintained a low profile. He had a Facebook page. His profile picture is David Hasselhoff's face superimposed on Yoda. And according to this article, his next court appearance will take place on Wednesday, January 25th. That's why I was holding off on reporting on this, because supposedly there was supposed to be a court appearance yesterday, but I have seen no information from that. It might be that it was rescheduled to January 25th. And of course, if more details come out, I will keep you updated as that happens. And just in case you're curious what this guy looks like, here is a picture of him with someone that they've blacked out, possibly a spouse of his, but that is him, Bradley Robert Edwards. He was also very active with youth sports, and here we can see him shaking hands with a former labor leader. By all signs, pretty normal looking guy, and it's just another one of those cases where you can't judge a book by its cover. This person apparently did some very terrible things. Police are probably feeling like they're in a very good position here. You have a solid DNA match between Bradley Edwards to Kiera, to the 17-year-old that was assaulted, and then to this Kimono that was at this other site of another assault. So this case is looking pretty open and shut in my mind, except for we have this other piece about Sarah Spiers. I can say here in the US, we've seen a few cases where a mass murderer has been discovered, and they will give up the information about where another body is located. They will sometimes do that for some type of relief with their current cases. In this case, you've got this guy with 2 sexual assault charges, 2 murder charges, and this is just a potentially a 3rd murder charge for 5 charges total. Perhaps, and I don't know if this is the way it'll go, but I have a feeling it might go this way. They might say to him, tell us where Sarah Spiers is. We won't charge you for her murder if you help us find the body, but you're still going to stand for those other 2. Will her family really go with that? I don't know. And I do believe that they would have some input into that decision. So there's still some things to play out here. In terms of her family, they have been quoted lately. Here is a picture of her father, Don Spiers. Claremont serial killing, Sarah Spiers' family anxious for answers. The father of Sarah Spiers, the first suspected victim of the Claremont serial killer, says his family are living on edge waiting for answers after the breakthrough arrest. But Mr. Spiers remains ever hopeful. The desperate answers to the questions that have haunted him for nearly 21 years about where his daughter's remains are and what happened to the teenager will one day be known. Quote, I'm feeling pretty bad. The anxiety is unbelievable because they have made an arrest and we haven't got a positive answer, Mr. Spiers says. Of course, we want closure, but that's not the only thing we want. We just hope that there's a chance it may happen. Now, he's not being extremely clear there. You can kind of read into that a few different ways. I believe what he's talking about is he's probably hoping for some type of additional criminal charge to be filed there. And I think that's really the question I brought up before. Is the family going to be happy if the prosecutors come to them and say, hey, look, we can try to make a deal to find out the location of her body, but you're going to have to give up that hope of justice in her name at least. I mean, look, if this guy gets convicted on 2 murders, what's the difference in his sentence going to be for 2 murders versus 3? I'm really not sure. This is a guy that's coming up on 50. I mean, if they give him 40 years in prison, he's pretty much done. So what's the difference between 40 and 60 or something along those lines? There's some tough considerations, I think, coming up for the Spiers family. I just hope that they are afforded that opportunity. And that's where it kind of goes back to the culprit. And is he going to allow them to really know at least where the remains of their daughter is? And jumping over to news.com.au, and this is pretty recent, just as of about a week ago, police seize car as part of Claremont murders investigation. This was January 7th, 2017 that this was posted. A white Holden Commodore station wagon has been seized from a suburb in Perth and is being forensically tested as part of the investigation into the Claremont murders. Police believe the 21-year-old VS model may have been used by accused killer Bradley Robert Edwards as he traveled around for work as a Telstra technician during 1996 and 1997. So now we have a car being thrown into the fold. And if you remember the original BrainScratch on this, I talked a lot about the potential of it being someone that was acting as if they were a taxi cab driver. We do know that one of the victims in particular specifically called for a taxi cab. By the time the cab showed up, she was nowhere to be seen. We know that police certainly looked in that direction because they DNA tested just about every taxi cab driver they could. They reformed a bunch of the laws out there about who could have a license to drive a taxi. Some very big changes happened all around that. So pretty interesting to me that we now have a look at the type of vehicle, and you can see it is a bit of a white mid-90s station wagon. I'm not totally familiar with what a Holden Commodore is. I really haven't seen a model like that out here in the US, but here is another picture. This is of a 2003 to 2004 Holden. And you can see it certainly looks a bit like a taxi. As a matter of fact, the Swan Taxi Company, I believe they're the ones that were called by one of the victims. We can see a Swan Taxi here, and you can see that is a very similar shape and type of car, though admittedly it has plenty of graphics on it, so you should be able to recognize that that is truly a Swan Taxi versus just a white car. But we have a few more aspects about this car to consider. First of all, if you recall the first episode of BrainScratch on this, there was a witness that noticed a car driving at very early morning hours, and he almost hit the car, and he thought it was strange for what he considered to be a taxi to be kind of in his neck of the woods at that time. It was just unheard of, and that's why it kind of burned itself into his memory. He insisted that he was sure that it was actually a Ford Falcon. So here we have a photo of a Ford Falcon, and if you compare that to the Holden, you can see, I think it's pretty reasonable that you can mistake those cars. Very similar shape, very similar design, particularly with how the rear compartment seems to swoop and get a little bit larger towards the rear. And not only that connection, but if we recall the 17-year-old that was assaulted, she specifically said she was put in some type of commercial vehicle. If this vehicle had a bunch of equipment in it, if there was things rattling around in the back, she would certainly think that. I've never quite seen a puzzle piece in one of these cases that has the edges fitting so perfectly compared to narratives that we had heard from the original investigation to the case. So I got to tell you, my confidence in terms of them having the right man, even if the DNA match wasn't there, just finding this car, knowing he had this car at this period of time, knowing that he would likely have either a telephone cord or network line in this car if he was truly some type of on-site technician for a telecommunications company, that jigsaw piece is starting to fit pretty snugly into this puzzle. And if all that wasn't enough, a little bit more about the car here. It's understood the car was seized from its current owner in December. On the same day, the 48-year-old was arrested at his home in Kewdale. Detectives had been working to identify car upholstery fibers found on the remains of Ms. Rimmer in July of 1996, which led police to believe the killer drove a VS Commodore made in the mid-1990s. So now we get another forensic match. It looks like fibers are at least lining up to this type of car. I believe they're hopeful that if they do put this car under some serious forensic analysis, who knows what they could find. They might find hair fibers, they might find blood. There's a lot of different things that can pop up from this piece of evidence. So I'm hopeful that it will. I think this is already a strong case with the DNA matching, but finding the car and being able to connect any of the victims to the car, that is going to make this an extremely solid case. And I think the stronger the case is, the better we have a chance of Sarah Spiers being found. If this guy thought that he could get away with it, that he could get away with the other 4 charges that are against him, maybe he would hold out on that information. But if his lawyers are telling him, hey, look, you're not going to win any of this stuff. They've got you with DNA, they've got you with fiber analysis, they found something in your car that ties to one of these victims. I believe that just increases our odds of Sarah's family finally having the answers to the questions they're looking for and finding some peace. And I think that would be an amazing outcome for what is a terrible and tragic situation. So personally, that's what I'm hoping for. What do you guys think? Tell me about it in the comments below. And thank you so much. Several of you have been sending me information on this. Just know sometimes I hold off on doing these update videos because I'm looking for the right amount of information or for a significant development that kind of turns a corner on this. This case definitely has all those pieces, but we still do have that big mystery. We don't know quite exactly how the police identified him. So if you have any thoughts on that, or if you have any info on that, please share it in the comment box below so the rest of us can gain some knowledge and some more insight into this. And congratulations to this task force. I mean, I can't imagine working on something literally for several decades. I'm sure there's been hundreds of different people that have reviewed this case or worked some different angle of it. And I think all of you guys deserve a pat on the back. So we'll see how the court case progresses. I will certainly keep you updated with more developments. Thank you so much for joining me here on today's BrainScratch. I know this one is a little short, but I am also going to give you another video. That's right, I'm going to do a BrainScratch Searchlight update on the Zuzu Verk case. So if you are looking for more, hit that next video and I'll see you there. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on the next show on the Lord and Arts channel.